So I won't get into too much about the muse, but it's a really important process. It's part of the process whether you acknowledge it or not. And there's good books like Morning Pages, The Artist's Way, which talks about like morning pages, things like that, to kind of get that crap out of your head that's occupying all the space and just get your sort of vent every morning on paper. That's really effective. Yeah, and I guess, another thing I just want to talk about too is when you get up in the morning, like there's so many distractions, things that can get in the way of that muse. I've kind of stopped reading the news. I try not to check Twitter. I try to leave the phone outside the studio. All this stuff really impacts your creative process and what you're going to get done in the studio. And there's so many everyday things that can distract you. And I've had to change my whole process now. I mean, I just bought a house now, and it's like something goes wrong in the house, and if you don't have it compartmentalized so that your studio and your workspace is one area and your domestic life is the other, it can kind of mess up the whole process, So there's so many things that you can spend your time doing in the day, but you really need to say, okay, between 9 and 5, I'm going to do music or do this or do it at night. I used to do music just late at night, and it was great because everything's quiet. During the day, it's noisy. There's more distractions. People are mowing their lawns. Planes are flying over. People are calling you. But now I don't have the luxury of being able to choose just, I'm going to work late at night. Like, there's limited time. You're back home from tour. You have limited time in the studio, and you've got to get stuff done in a limited scope. So I have to work during the day. I have to be efficient. So I keep that phone off. I keep the distractions to a minimum. And there's a good book, 4-Hour Workweek. Really good. Read that book. That was really helpful in leaving a day job to produce. And it just tells you how to get a better grasp of your time, stay disciplined, and get your work done. There's just so much about it is work ethic. And so if you can produce at night, that's nice. It's nice to have that. But I'm in the middle right now of building a studio from scratch. So I've had to work entirely on headphones for the last 3 months, and there's people banging the walls, putting rafters in, drilling holes in the wall. But I was able to get a couple remixes done, and you find a way. So you have to. You have your deadlines. Okay, so moving along. We talked about general production. We talked about vocal production. We touched a little bit on producing for the club, and this is really key because I feel like when you DJ, you're building up this experience at the club. You're seeing the crowd react, and it's really valuable information. And every show, I'm really kind of watching the audience and saying, okay, that didn't work. I really thought that was going to work, or this is great. There's unexpected times where I'm still surprised. At some point in the night, there's always something that surprises me, but little things like big dramatic filter sweeps or silence in small doses, which is never technically silence. It's like just like a reverb trailing out or a little echo. White noise buildups, the pitch risers, big dramatic changes from the build-up to where it comes back in. All kinds of little tricks I feel like you learn touring, and you have to kind of be out on the road to get a feel for it. And the tracks sound so different on these big club systems. It still surprises me. Every club system is so different to my ears that you're aiming to have a track that sounds as good as possible on the widest array of systems. So it's tricky, it's hard, and I try to use soundtrack a lot. During soundcheck, I'll go in and play the track, but it's not the same because you don't have the bodies in the room. But you still hear a little bit of how it sounds. And the other thing is you're in the DJ booth and you've got your near fields, but you're not hearing the mains. You're hearing this residual sound that's bouncing around and coming back to you. And depending on how well the club is set up, sometimes you have a great spot. Sometimes the main system sounds amazing. It sounds like shit back here. A lot of times you don't hear enough bass in the booth, so maybe you'll go back to the studio and overcompensate it. So I try to video shows. I try to have people. I have like a little Canon ELPH camera, which has an amazing little compressor on it or something that just keeps it from distorting. So I have my manager or somebody else walk out into the crowd, take some shots, take 2-minute chunks, so I can hear the room sound, hear how these sounds are resonating in the room, and also just how the show went, documenting if it was a good show. If it's a good one, we post it on YouTube. If it was bad, you never see it. But it's great to look back. I go back and I listen to it, and the audio quality is good enough. I mean, it's taping in HD, so you really captures a lot of the sound. So it's exciting. Also, if you guys have any questions as I'm going along here, rambling, let me know. I'm happy to. It's such a long seminar that just we don't have to wait 2 hours to talk about it. So if you have any questions, let me know as we go along here. Any questions right now before we move along? This is 2 days, 2 full days. So, which is for me is pretty fast. And I've just started learning Ableton the last year or so. I mean, it's still new. Pro Tools is still my main thing, but I really like Ableton. I really think it's lean and efficient, and it's just such an amazing program. So I still prefer to do my vocal editing and Pro Tools, things like that. But right now, just doing these drafts, it's a great program, especially on the plane. It just works, and you don't have to have it on a separate drive. And well, that's what I'll talk about in a minute, producing on the road. Any other questions real quick? We good? All right. So producing on the road, this has been a huge challenge. And if you talk to Deadmau5, if you talk to, I'm trying to think of other examples of guys, Vici or these other guys, so a lot of guys will say that they just flat out don't do it and that they can't get inspired. They don't have their monitors there. And I went through this phase. I'm like, I have to get work done. Like, this is insane. I can't be spending all my time sitting on a plane. And it's really hard. So I'm going to go through some of the limits, the things I ran into. Lack of personal space, especially for your devices. You don't have a lot of room for this. Definitely not this. And and a little keyboard. So, it's like, what can you do on the plane versus at the hotel? How do you get ready to, how do you have a template set up, or because you're working with a smaller screen, you've got a different keyboard interface that has different velocity. And I'm used to this big motif controller, which I love. I don't use anything on it except the keys, but I have to have those octaves. That just helps me compose faster. But the little nano key, which I didn't bring along, or the LPK25 that Akai makes, it's about this big, but you can play like a chord. So it's like you can play a chord and like a root note on it, but it'll favor like playing everything in C. So if I want to play something in G, I can transpose it maybe in Ableton, or I can move around the octaves. But there's these little limitations that come up. So I kept making excuses with producing on the road. I was like, all right, well, I don't have a keyboard, so then I bought the Akai, so that helped a lot. And then I was like, well, shoot, I don't like I need some of the third-party plugins. So I would install a bunch of plugins, and I didn't have the same plugins in the studio as I did on the plane, on my laptop. All right, so I got that settled. I got all the plugins on there. And then, so I was using Pro Tools, and I plugged the FireWire drive in, and then that drains the battery twice as fast. So I'm like, all right, so you deal with that. And then, so I've had to use Ableton or Logic for some of the pre-production. I bring an extra battery. This is one of the last few ones you can actually remove the battery and put it out back in. But still, that's kind of cumbersome on the plane. You got people next to you. I don't fly first class every time. I get upgraded when they're feeling nice. But it's just a waste of money. So I'd rather spend the money on gear. So you've got this limited space unless you're flying in amazing business class or first class. You're scrunched in, and so I always try to pick an aisle seat. That helps. Or if you just do the window and then someone can't get up, but you'll get in the middle of something. You have this great loop going and this great hook, and then someone has to go to the bathroom, or they spill something on you, or if you're traveling domestically, that's not enough time to really get a lot going. Every flight's about 2 hours, 3 hours. But if you've got something overseas, it's like great. Pay for the upgrade to somewhere where you have access to plug into power, fly some airline that does that, and it's worth it. But the problem still is always battery. And it never gets the battery that Apple says it does. It never gets the charge. It must be like closed and like in sleep mode that it gets the 6 hours. Always. So there's a lot of distractions, things, and I think it's just a matter of keeping it simple. Using those templates. Don't install ridiculous, string and classical sample libraries. Just install what you need. Maybe work with Operator or Signal Generator, or get something like Silent, which is a great synth. I love that. Get something lean, it's got some good sounds that are ready to go, and it's going to sound good off the bat, because the sound's going to be compromised on the plane anyways. So I will try to get a session going and get the musical parts in at the studio, and then transfer it to the laptop, because I know it's already sounding good. So when I bring it to the plane, I go, okay, well, I just trust this is sounding good. If I do it all completely from scratch on the plane, it's a little harder. I don't really have a reference point. A lot of stuff's phasing because the airplane's just going, for 3 hours. I use those Bose noise reduction headphones. Those are nice. They're definitely not accurate, but those seem to do the job. And I just use these sample sets and kick drums that I trust, that I know, oh, that kick just hits really well in the club. So, I'm going to stick with that. That helps. One thing, and we saw this already tonight, CPU limits. I did these sessions on my desktop computer, and they were running just perfectly. Now they're a little crackly on this, but some guys will bring along a UAD satellite, or they do something to sort of augment their processing, and that can help. But this is about 2 years old, but you have a couple instances of massive and reactor, and it won't even move along. So you've got to be efficient with how you're using the software stuff. So it's good to use that basic waveforms, basic synth. Silence is really efficient. So I love that. Can't say enough good things about that. So I finally got to the point where I started running out of excuses, and I'm starting to finally produce. This has been the last month or so. Produce stuff on the plane, in the hotel, just trying to make use of every minute. And the most important part, though, is that after I'm playing the track in the club, I'll immediately be like, oh shoot, that filter sweep needs to sweep up a little faster, or the white noise is too loud, or something else, and then I can go on the plane to the next gig, make that change, bounce it down, and play it there. So that's really key for me. And making those automation changes is really key. So yeah, save the main mix down till later. You need to be in that a place that you trust. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you play your track out and then you're like, and the mix down isn't quite there, but you get it as close as you can. There's a question, sorry about that, in the back.
Do you, when you're mixing a track, do you listen on as many different speakers, headphones as possible, or do you generally just stay with one pair of monitors or something?
I do. I have these huge barefoot monitors, and I think they kind of flatter it now. They're supposed to be really flat. They're made here in San Francisco, actually, I think. And practically had to mortgage a house to get these things. And they're really good, but you need to have multiple. I think it's really important to have multiple sets, and I don't have enough other ones. I really want to get like some NS10s or get some mix cubes, something with a little less low end. I had the Mackeys for a while, and those were just kind of flattering it, so I wanted something a little flatter to give a better response. So I think it's good to listen to different things. I've had my faith in headphones has been restored now, though. After producing for 3 months, I'm really surprised that they actually come out fairly accurately. I have some ultrasones, and they hype it a little bit, but for panning and like placement in the stereo field, they've been really good. It's just they just get hot, and it's kind of uncomfortable after a while. So I know a lot of guys, when they're on the road, they'll rotate multiple sets of headphones so they get the nice cool pair and or a different feel. You definitely don't want to fall asleep with like in-ears in. Like I have these custom molded ones, and it's just bad for your ears to do that after a while. But lots of different references. That's a good idea for sure. And I've never even had a tuned room before. Like what we're building right now is from the ground up. I mean, from the cement to the ceiling, we're building a perfectly tuned room. With all these different layers of vinyl and plaster and drywall, and it's an interesting process to see, because I'm very curious to see if the results will change, if I can get mix downs done quicker.
Do you ever use like cheap headphones, like iPod headphones, just to hear what they sound like?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the times I just don't have time to be as diligent as I want to about the mix down sometimes. Sometimes I really just got a deadline and I've got to get it done, and there isn't time to listen to it. Or have it be perfectly EQ'd and everything. So sometimes you're just in a kind of a bind and you have to move quickly. But if you have that luxury of the time, I think things like especially for bass translation and a lot of times I'll actually convert stuff to a really low res MP3 and see what kind of disappears. And you can do it down to the lowest MP3. I don't know if it's realistic, but do it down to maybe like a 92K MP3 or something. See how that works. But again, I mix both on the plane and in the studio. I'll have a little compressor on the main bus. I'll have a limiter, and then when I'm sort of comparing it to other mixes, I think that's really important to refresh your ears. Like, build a little sonic playlist with tracks you think sound amazing, and then just go back and forth. Have that on your iPhone so you can bring it with you to a sound check, or hear it on the plane or different environments. So I have the playlist here, and I write down all the notes when I do like a car test. I write down all the notes on the phone. So the notes are in here. It just plugs in directly into my car. It pretends it's a CD changer, and then so you're getting like this direct stream, of data. So I write the notes down. I have my sonic playlist, so I can go back and go, shit, that kick drum sounds terrible. I need to like make it sound much bigger. I need to have more compression or whatever. And it sounds so simple, but I keep coming back to that sonic playlist. It just helps so much to have that reference, and then bring that to other studios too. That's really important. I've heard my same speakers when I had the Mackies. I would go to other studios, and I would be like, "Is that the same speaker that I have? Like, it sounds like a completely different set, and just in a different room." So that reference thing will definitely be invaluable. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for the producing on the road. I'm going to open up a session. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's go through here. And a lot of times, I used to be much bigger on presets, and recently somehow it's faster to just do it from the ground up, and I just throw on just a single oscillator and then throw on another and detune it a little bit. So maybe I can pull up Operator, which is strange they make you buy it, but it should come with it. Let's see here. All right, so this one it's just a saw. It's a saw being filtered. This one. This one's got a few more oscillators in it. What is it? A little bit of white noise. I really like the looped white noise on this thing. It's really useful. So that's a sine wave at an octave below. Sine wave at an octave below, a little bit of white noise, and then way up, it's got some higher harmonics. So a square wave, a sine for sort of the sub, a little white noise for texture, and I try to bring that up just so you can barely hear it. So yeah, I put it in. We can switch around here. It sounds like in different modes. Let's see. I don't know if it changes. And that's another trick too. I like to just sort of, so far, I mean, I'm still new to it, but just switching between the two, different timbres, It's not exactly the same, but. But I feel like it takes longer to scroll through presets sometimes, unless you really know. Okay, like with Silent, I feel like they have a lot of songs ready to go, a lot of sounds that are just right there, and you can jump in. But I really like just one, one sawtooth, or a couple sawtooths sort of panned hard, with not a lot of detuning, and then with a good filter, and then you just get those ideas down, and then do more complex treatments later. Like I'll put a distortion on it or bit crush it. Let's see what else we have in here. And with this, I just duplicated it exactly as it was, so it's the same sine wave, square, saw, a little bit of noise, and I just used the pitch utility to pitch it up an octave. So those MIDI effects in Ableton are so handy, man. And it's something really crazy with the envelopes. Let's see what we have in here. Let's go back. Yeah, it's just sort of like a long release, it's definitely key, I feel like, to build your synthesis, to have it be the envelopes right before you start to get more into effects. So a lot of times I'll catch myself like, oh, no, it's not ready yet. Like, that needs to have like a snappier envelope, because you could put all this EQ, all these compressors on it, and if the source isn't there, it's going to be a lot harder to get that sound. Any other questions before we break?
What effects do you use on your bass, and how do you have a strong bass as well as a strong kick without clipping?
Limiters. I think limiters are good to really squash, because I don't really want a lot of dynamic range in the bass for me personally. So I'll brick wall limit it maybe on the bus. I know some guys will bust the kick and the bass together, but to me it's just a matter of having the kick, having the sidechain right, make sure the release time is correct. So let's see what we have here. Play. I don't think there's a big bass in this yet, but the bass is only on the. It's mainly for the kick, and then on the breakdown. In the breakdown, it does a little more, but I think it has some parts in here. So it's just sidechaining, giving it that space. I'll turn the sidechain off in a second so you can hear it. It's without the sidechain. So, yeah, just basic stuff in there. Yeah. You know, it's funny because I was using that equation for a little while, and it never seemed to really come out right. So I think it's really, and every compressor is going to react a little differently. It's such a variation that, I was even watching some of the Pyramind sessions, and the guy, I was like, really, he's using that release time on his compressor, and it totally gets thrown out when you change the threshold. So it really depends. Everything depends on each other, and the order in which you set the controls. I know there's some techniques where they say you start with the sensitive threshold and then in a really high ratio, and you set your attack first and then you release. Like by doing it in an order, it doesn't fall all apart. But man, it takes so long to just get even just one compressor dialed in, and then and then you have to learn another. Like the one in Logic is so different from the one in Ableton. I feel like just very different character. So I feel like by ear is good. I'm still amazed that there's only one compressor I've seen, I think the Waves Hybrid, where it actually says the release is going to be locked to the host tempo. So it says it's going to release back on a quarter note or an eighth note. I think there should be a lot more plugins that have those subdivisions, because it's like either put stuff in a musical context in terms of notes or in terms of the grid, and then everything else is, if you want to set it by milliseconds and geek out with that, great, and have it like swing. I know like Deadmau5 will put the on ping pong delays, he'll just nudge it a little bit so it's not right on the beat, so it doesn't phase out or something. And you can do that if you want, but just for that starting point, they should be making these plugins that lock in a little better. Save a lot of time. But it is a lot of guesswork, because I'll listen to it, I'll get the sidechain going, and then realize it's not jumping enough, and then you move the threshold, and then it screws it all up. So, well, I think a good stopping point, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay. So this next part, we're just going to get into basically this beast over here, which is a Allen & Heath Xone 4D. And this is used for performance for DJing. And I use it really in a basic way. Only a couple effects. Use a ping pong delay, some reverb. I have them assigned to these faders. We've got the sort of onboard filters, little LFOs that I use for kind of adding drama. And basically everything is coming through Ableton. I started to actually just use Ableton for DJing before doing any production with it. And it's just always been such a rock solid program. It's been just great. So I bring this with me everywhere. I bring it on the flight. You can't really rent it anywhere. So it's kind of a beast. It's kind of overkill for what I do. But I treat each of these faders like a different deck. and except one is for effects and one is for loops. Sometimes I'll put loops in. But the problem is if you go too complicated, if you have something assigned to every single one of these buttons, you're going to forget what that does at some point, and it'll be kind of a less effective performance. So very basic. I have beat repeat. These turn on the devices, these little push knobs. And then I have these knobs change the division of the note for beat repeat, and the other one changes the decay. So I use that for sort of these dramatic stop and start effects or like ending the night. But the beauty of this kind of setup is that you have an analog mixer right here in the core with EQ and the filters. All that stuff's on board. But you have these sidecars, which are all MIDI. So I could change this mixer every night if I wanted to, if I was crazy enough. And I could change the routing. You're basically creating a custom mixer. You could say, I want this jog wheel to be the filter, or be a bit crusher. I want this fader to be, instead of effects, this could be some parameter in the filter, or a crusher as well. So there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but I have a very simple way that I can just sort of work quickly throughout the night. And I start everything by, I just use 320 MP3s. I don't use waves. There's just not enough time to prep those. At the hotel, you have limited download speeds. I know they probably don't sound as good as waves, but it's worth the convenience for just a little bit of trade-off in sound quality. And I know some people are saying, oh my God, it's not a little bit of a trade-off. It's huge, but it's not really that noticeable. I mean, the club, yes, it does sound bigger and fuller if you're playing it straight through, full res, but at that point in the night, the difference is kind of small. So I think it's plenty fine at 320. Anything below that would be bad. So everything is color-coded according to the key, and everything's run through Mixed In Key. I pretty much play the same tempo the whole night, like 128, 129, 130. There's no real need for me to change the tempo that much. A lot of people will come to me after the show and go, oh my God, that was amazing. You just played this crazy range of tempos, and like you brought us up, you brought us down. I'm like, no, I was at 129 the whole night. Sorry. but tempo is also kind of a perceived thing. You perceive time in different ways. So some tracks sound slower, just the way they're put together at a certain tempo, and I think 128 is great. I don't know, some people knock sort of the tempo, but I don't understand why people will do like a 126. Like, is it that much better at 126 to make the song? It's going to sound that much worse time stretched. So all the tracks are repitched. I think that sounds the best. Sometimes that can make things a little tricky with the key because it's pitching it up or down based on what the original tempo is. So when I play Longest Road and it's 125, it might not go with my Daft Punk remix or whatever was done at 128 and is actually in that key. So how many of you guys have used Mixed In Key before? Okay, so it's old hat to a bunch of you, but it's so simple. It was pretty life-changing though, and for those of you who haven't seen it, I just sort of throw everything in here, retag everything. I buy most of my stuff from Beatport, and I just hit the tutorial thing for the quick reference to the chart. I'm told they're coming out with a new version that's going to be a little more intelligent use of the chart in there, so it's not like going to the tutorial each time. But I have the tracks just named in the numbers because that's how you move around the system. For those of you guys that don't use it, like if the song is in 2A, I can mix that into 2B, or I can mix it into 1A or 3A. And then sometimes there's these other combinations where you can go across the wheel, but I haven't really found a formula for that works every time or anything. So you just got to experiment. And I think to me that was the beauty of Ableton, and that you have the luxury to experiment on the plane, and you can't have your CDJs out on the tray on the plane. You just can't get around that. So I use every second of that time in the plane. If I'm not producing something, I'm typically, the best use of the time is seeing which tracks match with others. And then, doing edits, slicing out segments if the breakdown's too long or something like that. So I try to use that time. It just takes a lot of trial and error. And that's how I do the podcasts. I do them all in Ableton on the plane. It saves you a lot of time because you don't have to wait an hour for it to bounce on the plane. But then I go and bounce it all in Pro Tools, and that takes an hour. That takes forever. So this system is really useful. I really thought it was a gimmick when it came out, and then I know guys will actually drag track elements like stems into it as well, and some guys will do samples, but I don't really think it's accurate because like they'll drag like kick drums into it, but then the kick decays and the pitch changes. You know, a good kick drum, it's not just a solid sine wave; it's going to go boom. So I don't know if that works or not, but it's just nice to have that resource where you can filter things around by the song key and the tempo. And I haven't cleared these tracks for use for play, but we're just going to play through a few of these. We can cut it out if we have to. So I'm going to just give you an example of harmonic mixing real quick and some of the effects. So look at limited screen space here. So it's sort of a colorful mess is what it looks like. And so I'm going to mix Longest Road with, this is something I like to do live with a Dennis Frere track that's in the same key. Okay, let's put that on 3. Okay, so I'm going to put some effects. I got some ping pong delay. So there's 2 tracks playing, full tracks.
Just an ordinary day. Till you came around, I had my feet on the ground.
So it's a little off. So if I do that and I'm in the mix, I can just bring it back and start it again where I wanted to. It's all in time.
Just an ordinary day. Till you came around, and now my life's upside
So I'm on the 1.
Imagine that.
Sounds a little better.
And it's all because I heard you say. And it's all because I heard you say. And it's all because I walked your way. And
So I'll do like some bass swaps, take the kick out of one, keep the kick in the other. So right now it's a breakdown. So it just opens up all these possibilities. You can mix harmonically. It all sounds like it's the same song. You could have one vocal from one track. You could play a stem that's in one key with another loop from a track. So you can keep building up. So it's like basically 4 decks, like I was saying earlier. And I have the effects separately, so I'll add a little drama to the track. It's all effects there. And I can just do stuff with the LFOs on that. But it's nice to have that independent control so I can go really wet and then dry, like, just cut out quickly. I use a lot of the filters on here, very basic, just bread and butter effects, just a high pass filter. And let's see, beat repeat. So one's decay, one's set to grid. It took me a long time to figure out those were the 2 key things. So you have to do it in a way that makes sense in the performance. So like I wouldn't just do it like that. I mean, you can do so many variations with it. So. And what I'll do is I'll loop like just a little segment of it. Maybe 8th note. I'll start it on that. And then bring some effects in. It's just all to add drama to the track. Very simple stuff. And if I did it any more complicated, after a few drinks, I would probably forget what I'm doing. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's when you're up there, it's so key because a lot of your job too is guarding your gear from people, spilling stuff on it. And that's just, it's a party, and it's not a perfectly safe environment either. So, any questions before I keep moving on? Do you want to hear some more music?